I am Julian, and I am 32 years old. 2 years ago, I walked out of my own brother's wedding right before the vows were even exchanged. While I was standing there, holding a $1,500 check I had carefully saved up for him, my own mother looked me dead in the eye, adjusted her designer corsage, and told me to just go stand near the wall because I was going to ruin the aesthetic of the family photos. They humiliated me in front of 200 wealthy guests, literally giving my reserved seat to a complete stranger because my face and my suit did not fit their carefully curated color palette. But there is one thing they did not know as they watched me walk out the door. They did not know I was the sole guarantor of the $200,000 commercial business loan that was keeping my brother's completely fake millionaire lifestyle afloat. And right now, they are begging me not to let the bank take absolutely everything they own. Before I tell you exactly how I dismantled their perfect little world with nothing but a keyboard and a lawyer, please hit the like button if you believe in justice. And do not forget to let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Now, let's go back to the exact moment the blindfold was ripped from my eyes. The air inside that rustic, severely overpriced vineyard venue was thick with the cloying scent of imported eucalyptus floral arrangements, white roses, and pure, unadulterated desperation. It was a late Saturday afternoon in early September. The kind of day where the sunlight turns everything golden, a photographer's absolute dream. I stood near the back of the massive reception hall, dressed in a sharp, tailored navy suit I had bought specifically for this occasion. I had spent $800 on that suit, wanting to look my absolute best to honor my family. The ambient lighting was perfectly dimmed, casting long, dramatic shadows across the polished hardwood floors. A live string quartet in the corner was playing a classical rendition of a modern pop song. It was everything my younger brother Carter and his fiancée Chloe had obsessed over for the past 18 months. A perfectly curated, Instagram-ready fantasy design to make them look like old money royalty to their thousands of internet followers. And standing there, blending into the shadows by the entrance, I was the smudge on their expensive lens. I had just been told by the wedding planner, a woman who looked at me like I was something she had stepped in, and then confirmed by my own flesh and blood mother, that there was no seat for me. Not a bad seat near the kitchen. Not a seat at the overflow tables. No seat at all. I was expected to hover near a stack of metal folding chairs by the west wall so my average, non-influencer face would not accidentally end up in the background of their high-end, wide-angle photography. A cold, heavy realization settled into my chest, radiating outward and freezing the blood in my veins. It was not a sudden, fiery explosion of anger. It was much worse. It was the quiet, absolute death of an illusion I had held onto for my entire life. The pathetic illusion that if I just gave enough money, offered enough help, and stayed quiet enough, my family would eventually love me for who I actually was. I looked across the sprawling room, past the massive floral chandeliers, past the guests mingling with crystal champagne flutes. I saw the gift table. It was draped in pristine white linen and positioned perfectly under a spotlight next to the 5-tier wedding cake. Right in the center of the pile of pastel-wrapped boxes sat a matte silver envelope. It had Carter and Chloe's names written on it in my neat, block handwriting. Inside that envelope was a check for $1,500. It was money I had worked hard for. Money I had painstakingly set aside from my salary as a back-end software engineer, thinking I was helping my younger brother build a solid foundation for his new life. I did not think about the social consequences. I did not consult the voice in my head that always told me to keep the peace. I just moved. I walked straight across the polished hardwood floor, my leather shoes clicking rhythmically against the wood. I ignored the confused glances of a few guests who were already taking their seats. I reached the table, my hand perfectly steady. I picked up the silver envelope, feeling the thick, expensive paper between my fingers, and smoothly slid it into the inside breast pocket of my suit jacket. The weight of it against my chest felt like a shield of armor. One of Carter's groomsmen, a guy named Liam who had spent the entire weekend making snide remarks about my job and my lack of social media presence, stepped forward from the bar area. He held a half-empty glass of champagne and looked at me with a mixture of confusion and open disdain. "Hey man, what exactly do you think you are doing?" Liam asked, his voice carrying over the soft music, drawing the attention of several people nearby. "You can't just take a wedding gift back. That is pathetic." I turned to him. I felt no fear, no embarrassment. My heart was beating a steady, powerful rhythm against my ribs. I felt a strange, intoxicating sense of clarity. "Do not worry about it, Liam," I said, my voice projecting loud enough for the people in the immediate vicinity to hear clearly. "I will stay out of the frame forever." I turned on my heel and walked toward the heavy oak double doors leading out to the gravel parking lot. I did not look back at the room. I pushed the heavy doors open, the cool evening air hitting my face, providing a stark, refreshing contrast to the suffocating, toxic atmosphere inside. "Julian, wait." I heard the frantic crunch of expensive leather shoes on gravel behind me. It was Carter. He had abandoned his pre-ceremony photo session and was jogging toward me, his tailored tuxedo jacket flapping open in the wind. He looked completely panicked. But looking at his face, I knew the truth. He was not panicked because he had deeply hurt his older brother. He was panicked because I was not sticking to the script. I was supposed to take the abuse silently. I was supposed to absorb the public disrespect so his aesthetic would remain flawless. I stopped next to my reliable sedan and turned to face him. The sun was just starting to dip below the horizon, casting a red glare across the vineyard. This was the defining moment of our brotherhood, the moment the final cord was cut, and I was finally ready to face it. Carter stood there in his expensive suit, panting slightly, looking at me like I was a public relations disaster he needed to quickly manage before the cameras started rolling. He had absolutely no idea that the entire financial foundation of his arrogant life was currently resting in the palm of my hand. To truly understand how a mother could tell her oldest son to stand by a blank wall like a piece of unwanted, defective furniture, you have to understand the deeply toxic dynamic of the house we grew up in. We lived in a standard, upper-middle-class suburban neighborhood with a notoriously strict HOA, the kind of place where keeping up appearances was not just a hobby, it was an extreme neighborhood sport. My parents, Eleanor and Richard, were the undisputed gold medal champions of that game. I was always the quiet, analytical one. I liked building computers, understanding logic, and creating systems that made actual sense. I kept my head down, got straight A's, earned a solid academic scholarship, and eventually landed a high-paying job as a back-end developer for a major tech firm. I made a very comfortable salary, crossing into the six-figure mark by my mid-20s, but I never felt the need to broadcast it to the world. I drove a reliable sedan, aggressively maxed out my 401k, quietly invested in index funds, and lived a peaceful, drama-free life. I foolishly thought my financial independence and stability would make my parents proud. I thought they would appreciate that I never, not once, asked them for a dime after I turned 18. Carter, born 2 years after me, was the exact opposite in every conceivable way. He was the golden child, the sun around which my parents revolved. From the time he was 10 years old, he knew exactly how to manipulate a room. He was loud, charming, and possessed an unearned, aggressive confidence that my parents absolutely adored. When our grandfather passed away, the small inheritance he left was meant to be split evenly between us for our college funds. It was enough to cover 2 full years of state tuition. Carter blew his entire half within his first 3 semesters of college on endless frat parties, spring break trips, and a semester abroad in Europe that somehow yielded exactly 0 academic credits. When the money ran out, my parents quietly drained their savings to cover his massive tuition deficit and immediately told me to be understanding of his journey. "He just has a bigger personality, Julian," my father would confidently say across the table at our Thanksgiving dinners, completely ignoring the fact that I had just announced a major promotion at work. "He needs more room to grow and experience the world. You have always been so self-sufficient. You do not need our help like he does." Carter eventually dropped out and became a commercial real estate agent. Not the kind who actually grinds, learns the market, and sells a lot of properties. No, he was the kind who posts a dozen motivational quotes on social media every single day while taking selfies in front of luxury properties he had absolutely no part in selling. He leased a high-end Porsche he could barely afford the monthly payments on. He wore ostentatious designer watches bought on credit. He built an elaborate, fragile house of cards based entirely on a fabricated image of massive success. And my parents bought front-row tickets to his daily show, clapping louder than anyone else. About 18 months before the Vineyard wedding, the deep cracks in Carter's financial facade started to show. He called me in a complete panic on a random Tuesday night. His voice was shaking. He had tried to pivot and start a luxury mattress import business to supplement his failing, non-existent real estate income. He needed warehouse space immediately, but his credit score was completely destroyed from years of unpaid credit cards and missed car payments. No reputable bank would even look at his application. My mother called me the very next morning. She was sobbing hysterically through the phone. She pleaded with me, using every ounce of emotional manipulation she had honed over the decades. She told me Carter's entire future, his very survival, was on the line. She said the phrase she always used to trap me: family protects family. Against every logical instinct my brain possessed, against all the warning bells ringing in my head, I agreed to meet him at the bank. I sat in a cold leather chair across from a loan officer and signed my name as the sole guarantor on a $200,000 commercial business loan. I legally bound my own pristine financial security to his sinking ship. I did it because, deep down, the lonely, invisible kid inside me thought this massive, undeniable gesture would finally earn me a permanent place at the family table. I thought they would finally see me as a valuable, essential part of the family. I was dead wrong. It only made me convenient. It transformed me from the ignored older brother into the family ATM. Shortly after the loan was approved and his warehouse was secured, Carter met Chloe. Chloe was a micro-influencer whose entire personality revolved around aesthetic beige tones and treating life like one long audition for a reality television show. She had a very specific, rigid vision for her life and her brand, and I fundamentally did not fit into it. I was too boring. I did not wear clothes with massive logos. I did not have thousands of followers. The disrespect started small, a slow drip of poison. When they proudly announced the wedding party at a lavish family dinner, Carter made Liam his best man. Liam was a guy he had met at a networking event 6 months prior who happened to have a massive following online. I was not even asked to be a groomsman, not even an usher. I swallowed my pride, forced a smile, and told myself it was fine. It was their special day. I was happy to just be a supportive guest. Then came the bachelor party. They meticulously planned a lavish, multi-day weekend in Miami. I was explicitly not invited. I only found out about the trip when I saw the heavily edited photos online of them drinking expensive champagne on a private yacht. Yet, a week before that exact trip, Carter had the absolute audacity to text me complaining that they were a few $1,000s short on funds for the yacht rental deposit. Like an absolute brainwashed fool, I wired him $2,000 from my savings. He replied with a single, generic thumbs-up emoji. No phone call, no genuine thank you, just a digital nod acknowledging my financial compliance. At the formal engagement dinner held at a 5-star restaurant, Liam actually made a toast mocking my career. He stood up in front of 50 people, clinking his glass, and joked that I was the guy who fixed their Wi-Fi routers while Carter was out closing million-dollar commercial real estate deals. The entire room laughed. My own parents laughed. Carter just sat there and smirked. I sat silently, gripping my water glass until my knuckles turned stark white, acutely aware that I was the one secretly paying for the incredibly expensive steak they were all eating. I justified it all. I told myself that once the stressful wedding was over, things would settle down and return to normal. I convinced myself that my role as the dependable, silent older brother was an honorable one, even if it was a completely thankless one. I ignored the glaring, massive red flags because facing the brutal truth that my brother only saw me as a financial safety net, and my parents fully supported his exploitation, was simply too painful to process. I drove to that Vineyard wedding truly believing that blood meant something profound. I had absolutely no idea I was willingly walking into a public execution of my own dignity. The morning of the wedding, I woke up in my overpriced, minimalist hotel room feeling a heavy, dark knot of anxiety twisting in the pit of my stomach. I brushed it off, convincing myself it was just normal wedding day jitters, the kind any older brother would feel. I got out of bed, showered, carefully put on the expensive navy suit, practiced my fake, supportive smile in the mirror, and drove the winding, scenic roads out to the massive vineyard estate. When I arrived, the place was buzzing with chaotic energy. Professional photographers and videographers were running around the manicured lawns, aggressively adjusting lighting umbrellas and drone cameras. I walked through the grand entrance and into the main reception hall to find my table. There was a beautiful, meticulously hand-calligraphed seating chart displayed on a massive, ornate golden easel covered in fresh ivy. I stood in front of it and scanned the list. It was organized in alphabetical order. I naturally went to the R's. Reynolds, Carter. Reynolds, Eleanor. Reynolds, Richard. I stopped. I looked again, tracing my finger down the thick parchment paper. My name was not there. I stood perfectly still for a full minute, my analytical brain desperately trying to process this as a simple clerical error from the printing company. I pulled out my phone to send a quick text to Carter, but then out of the corner of my eye, I saw Serena. She was Chloe's absurdly high-end wedding planner, a severe-looking woman who carried an iPad like it was a loaded weapon and spoke to the catering staff like they were stray dogs wandering the streets. I approached her politely, keeping my voice level. "Excuse me, Serena?" I said, offering a small smile. "I think there has been a minor mistake on the seating chart printing. I cannot seem to find my name anywhere. Julian Reynolds. I am the groom's older brother." Serena barely even looked up from her glowing screen. "Julian, right? Chloe explicitly mentioned you." Her tone was shockingly dismissive, almost intensely annoyed that I had broken her concentration. She sighed heavily and shuffled a few loose, printed papers attached to a physical clipboard she held under her arm. As she aggressively moved the clipboard, a folded sheet of paper slipped out from underneath the metal clip and fluttered down to the polished floor. Being polite, I bent down to pick it up for her. As my hand grabbed the paper, my eyes instantly caught the bold heading printed at the top: Guest Visual Assessment and Placement. I froze. My eyes locked onto the text, reading the lines rapidly. It was an incredibly detailed list of family members, categorically graded by how they would look in the background of professional photos and social media posts. My eyes scanned down until I saw it. There was my name, Julian Reynolds. Next to it, circled in bright red ink, was a grade, C-. And beside that grade, a handwritten note in Chloe's distinct, looping handwriting: "Keep out of main reception shots. Hide near the west wall near the speakers. Clashes with the modern aesthetic. Too plain." My blood ran completely cold. The temperature in my body plummeted. I slowly stood up and handed the paper back to Serena, who aggressively snatched it away from my hand, her face flushing a deep, embarrassed crimson. She did not offer a single word of apology for the document I had just read. She simply pointed a manicured finger toward the far back corner of the massive room. We had to make some very last-minute, critical adjustments for Chloe's influencer friends who flew in, Serena said coldly, her voice devoid of any human empathy. "There is an open standing room area by the west wall. You can watch the speeches and the dances from back there." I did not respond to her. I turned and walked mechanically into the main dining area. I found the main family table positioned prominently right next to the lavish sweetheart table. I saw my parents' elegant name cards resting on the gold-rimmed plates. And right there, exactly where the brother of the groom should be sitting, there was a pristine card that read, "Brad, Chloe's cousins +1. They had literally given my seat of honor to a random guy who had been dating Chloe's distant cousin for exactly 3 weeks. A guy who probably did not even know Carter's last name or where he grew up. I kept walking, scanning the rest of the room, feeling like a ghost haunting my own family's celebration. My heart, already fractured, shattered completely into dust when my eyes landed on Grandma Rose. She is 82 years old, frail, and uses a standard medical wheelchair. They had placed her at a tiny, cramped table in the absolute furthest corner of the room, completely obstructed by a massive 8-foot-tall floral privacy screen. She could not see the dance floor. She could not see the head table. She could not even see the cake. They had literally hidden our own grandmother behind a fake hedge because her medical equipment did not fit the glamorous, flawless vibe of their internet event. That was the absolute breaking point. The tether snapped. It was no longer just about me and my bruised ego. It was about the terrifying, utter lack of basic humanity in these people. I spotted my mother standing near the catering entrance, fussing with her expensive corsage and laughing with one of Chloe's aunts. I marched directly over to her, my face a mask of stone. "Mom," I said, my voice dangerously low, cutting through the ambient noise. "Why am I not on the seating chart? And why is Grandma Rose hidden behind a fake hedge like a piece of garbage?" My mother stopped laughing immediately. She let out a heavy, exasperated sigh, looking around nervously to see if anyone important was watching our interaction. "Julian, please, keep your voice down. Do not start drama today of all days." "Drama?" I asked, staring intently at the woman who had raised me, searching her face for any sign of maternal love. "I do not have a chair, Mom. A stranger named Brad is sitting with you at the family table. Explain it to me right now." She absolutely refused to meet my eyes, looking down at her expensive shoes. Chloe's friends flew in all the way from Los Angeles. They have incredibly large platforms on social media. It is very important for Carter's real estate image that the photos look top-tier and professional. "You are family, Julian. Family is supposed to sacrifice for the greater good. Just go stand near the wall by the speakers. You are going to ruin the aesthetic of the family photos if you sit near the front." I stared at her. The silence between us stretched out for what felt like an eternity. The woman who had sat on my couch sobbing, begging me to sign my financial life away for her golden child so he wouldn't go bankrupt, was now casually telling me I was too ugly and too plain to sit at a dinner table. "I see," I whispered, the words barely escaping my lips. The clarity I felt in that exact moment was terrifying and absolute. All the agonizing years of trying to be the good son, all the money I had freely given, all the silent, unwavering support. It meant absolutely nothing. I was a tool, a resource, and tools are kept locked away in the dark shed when the important company comes over to admire the garden. That is the exact moment I turned around, walked directly to the gift table, and took my envelope back. "Julian, wait." Carter's panicked voice brought me violently back to the present moment in the dusty gravel parking lot. I stood by the door of my reliable sedan, the silver envelope burning a hole through the fabric of my suit jacket pocket. He jogged up to me, panting slightly, looking immaculate in his tuxedo but entirely furious beneath the surface. "What is your actual problem?" Carter hissed, immediately looking over his shoulder at the heavy venue doors to make absolutely sure his bride or her influencer friends were not watching us. "People inside saw you take that envelope off the table. You are making a massive, embarrassing scene." "I am leaving, Carter," I said. My voice was eerily, unnaturally calm. I did not yell. I did not raise my hands. I did not cry. I am going back to my hotel room, and then I am going home. "Are you seriously throwing a massive tantrum over a folding chair?" he demanded, throwing his hands up in the air in mock exasperation. "It is Chloe's day. Her cousin's new boyfriend needed a spot at the main table, so the couples matched symmetrically for the wide-angle drone shots. Grow up, Julian. The world does not revolve around you. It is not always about you." I looked at him. I really, truly looked at the man my brother had become. I looked past him at the rented, gleaming Porsche parked illegally in the VIP spot near the entrance. I looked at the custom-tailored suit he bought with high-interest credit cards he could not possibly pay off. And I remembered the thick stack of papers at the bank. The $200,000 commercial loan bearing my legal signature as the sole guarantor. I thought about the massive lawsuit that would inevitably follow when his fake business collapsed. I thought about our grandfather's inheritance he had wasted on cheap thrills. "You are entirely right," I said softly, the calm in my voice clearly unsettling him. "It is not about me. It never was. Have a beautiful, aesthetically pleasing life, Carter." I opened my car door, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. The low hum of the motor felt incredibly grounding. Carter stepped closer, hitting the roof of my car with his open palm, a sudden flash of real anger replacing the panic. "If you drive away right now, if you leave this wedding, you are dead to me," he shouted, his face turning red. "Do you hear me? Dead to me." I put the car in drive and pulled away slowly, leaving him standing alone in the dust of the parking lot, his threats echoing uselessly in the evening air. The long drive back to the hotel was absolute silence. I did not turn on the radio. I did not connect my phone to listen to a podcast. I just drove, staring at the white lines on the highway, feeling the toxic, deeply ingrained programming of my childhood peeling away layer by agonizing layer. I felt an incredible, overwhelming lightness in my chest. The crushing, suffocating weight of trying to win the approval of people who fundamentally despised me was finally gone. I was free. I walked into the quiet hotel lobby. Dave, the night receptionist, looked up from his computer monitor. He was a guy in his late 50s, kind eyes, probably working this second job on the weekends to put his kids through a community college. He took one long look at my face, my suit, and stopped typing immediately. "Checking out early, sir?" Dave asked gently, his voice devoid of any judgment, just pure human empathy. "Yes, Dave," I replied, offering him a small, genuine smile. "I really need to go home tonight." I went up to my room, threw my clothes into my suitcase in less than 10 minutes, and sat heavily on the edge of the mattress. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the matte silver envelope. I stared at my own handwriting for a moment. Then I tore it open. I took out the $1,500 check, and with slow, deliberate motions, I ripped it into tiny, unrecognizable pieces, letting them fall like snow into the small plastic trash can by the desk. Just then, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a text message from Chloe. "You are an incredibly selfish, toxic person. You really ruined everything today by storming out. Do not even bother showing up for the post-wedding brunch tomorrow morning. We do not want your negative energy dragging down our success." I read the message twice. A slow, dark, genuine smile spread across my face. They actually thought this was the end of it. They thought they could banish me to the shadows, hurl insults at me, and just continue living their fully funded fantasy life. They thought I would just crawl back to my quiet, boring life, lick my wounds, and continue silently paying the massive bills for their staggering arrogance. I reached into my bag and pulled out my laptop. I flipped it open and connected to the hotel Wi-Fi. I pulled up my secure, two-factor authenticated banking portal. I navigated directly to the commercial loan section. I looked at the current balance and the transaction history of Carter's business account, the exact account I had full administrative access to as the primary guarantor. My eyes narrowed as I scrolled through the recent transactions. Right there, buried between warehouse leasing fees, was a massive, glaring irregularity. A massive wire transfer of $40,000 had been moved out of the commercial loan account and deposited directly to the vineyard venue 2 weeks ago. He hadn't just used the loan to keep a failing business alive. He had illegally siphoned commercial funds to pay for the very wedding I was just kicked out of. He used my money, my credit, to fund the event where they told me I was too ugly to sit at a table. I felt a cold, calculated rage settle into my bones. I had the legal power to freeze the credit lines immediately. I had the power to consult my lawyer, Marcus, and violently withdraw my guarantee due to blatant breach of contract and financial fraud. The storm was not over. In fact, it had not even really begun. I was about to teach my family a brutal, unforgettable masterclass in consequences, and I was going to use their own vanity to destroy them. I sat perfectly still at the small, rigidly minimalist desk in my overpriced hotel room. The only light illuminating the space came from the harsh, clinical blue glow of my laptop screen. It cast long, distorted shadows against the beige wallpaper, matching the distorted reality of my own family that I was finally being forced to confront. The digital clock on the bedside table read 2:14 in the morning. The rest of the world was fast asleep, but I had never felt more awake, more razor-sharp, or more dangerously focused in my entire 32 years of existence. The adrenaline pumping through my veins was not the hot, chaotic, blinding anger of a sudden argument. It was a cold, calculating, and incredibly precise energy. I stared intensely at the secure commercial banking portal on my screen. My eyes were locked onto one specific line item in the digital ledger. It was a massive, unauthorized $40,000 wire transfer. It had been moved directly from the commercial real estate loan account, the one bearing my legal signature, into the operating account of the exact same luxury vineyard venue where I had just been told I was too ugly to sit at a dinner table. My brother Carter had crossed a massive, unforgivable legal line. He had moved far past being just a spoiled, entitled golden child who relied on his parents and his older brother to clean up his financial messes. He had crossed directly into the terrifying territory of committing actual, undeniable, and highly documented financial fraud. He had taken federally regulated funds from a commercial real estate loan. This was a loan that I had personally, legally guaranteed under the strict penalty of a massive lawsuit that could easily ruin my own pristine credit, drain my retirement accounts, and destroy everything I had built. And he used it to pay for premium eucalyptus centerpieces, an imported string quartet, and an open bar serving top-shelf liquor to internet strangers. I picked up my phone. The glass screen felt freezing cold against my fingertips. I scrolled past the dozens of missed calls and frantic text messages from my mother. I bypassed the angry voicemails from Carter. I focused on finding one specific name in my contacts list. Marcus. Marcus and I had gone to the same state university. While I had spent my time writing complex code, building back-end software systems, and securing a massive starting salary as a developer, Marcus had spent his time studying corporate law. He was now a senior partner at a very aggressive, very successful corporate litigation firm in the city. He was the kind of lawyer who dismantled fraudulent companies for breakfast. I knew it was the middle of the night on a weekend, but I sent him a text message anyway. The message was brief and entirely devoid of emotion. I typed, "Emergency. Carter committed wire fraud on the commercial loan I guaranteed. He siphoned funds to pay for his wedding venue. I need to freeze the accounts and withdraw my name immediately to protect my own assets from a lawsuit. Call me the absolute second you wake up." He called me exactly 4 minutes later. His voice was gravelly and thick from sleep, but his mind, honed by years of brutal corporate lawsuits, was already working at full speed. I walked him through every single detail of the nightmare I had just survived. I told him about the humiliating seating chart. I told him about the incredible disrespect from Chloe's wedding planner. I told him about my own mother telling me to hide by the wall like a piece of garbage. I told him about the $1,500 check I took back from the gift table. And finally, I told him about the $40,000 wire transfer that proved my younger brother was a financial criminal. Marcus did not offer me empty, useless sympathy. He did not tell me that family is complicated or that I should be the bigger person. He offered me a brutal, highly effective, legally binding strategy. We spent the next 2 grueling hours on the phone, drafting the necessary legal notifications and breach of contract declarations. Because Carter had explicitly used the commercial business funds for personal, non-business expenses, he had fundamentally breached the core covenant of the loan agreement. This gave me the absolute, undeniable legal right to instantly freeze the account, halt all outbound credit lines, and formally notify the bank's fraud department of his misappropriation of funds. I was not just taking my name off the account and wishing him well on his journey. I was detonating the very financial bridge he was standing on, right while he was holding a glass of expensive champagne. I attached the electronic forms, copied the bank's executive fraud department, and clicked send. It was officially done. The financial guillotine had dropped, and there was absolutely nothing Carter could do to stop the heavy metal blade from falling. I finally managed to get a few hours of fitful sleep. The next morning, I drove my reliable sedan back to the airport, returned the rental car, and boarded a commercial flight back to my quiet suburban home. I paid for the exorbitant in-flight Wi-Fi, opened my laptop on the small tray table, and watched my inbox like a hawk watching its prey. It did not take long for reality to crash down on them. At exactly 1 in the afternoon, while Carter and his new wife Chloe were presumably checking into whatever ridiculously overpriced, 5-star luxury resort they had booked for their aesthetic honeymoon, my phone began to vibrate violently against the plastic tray table. The caller ID flashed Carter's name. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. It immediately rang again, and again. On the 4th consecutive try, I finally pressed the green button and lifted the phone to my ear. I did not say a single word. I just listened to the absolute chaos unfolding on the other end. "Julian," Carter screamed into the receiver. His voice was completely frantic, echoing slightly like he was standing in a massive, cavernous hotel lobby with high marble ceilings. The background noise sounded like a very tense, highly embarrassing standoff with a luxury concierge. "What the hell did you do? My platinum corporate card was just declined at the front desk in front of everyone. They are asking for a new form of payment for a $12,000 hold, Julian. $12,000. I looked out the small airplane window at the fluffy white clouds rolling casually by. "It is a beautiful day for flying, Carter," I said, my voice completely even and devoid of any emotion whatsoever. "How is the honeymoon treating you? Did you get a room with good natural lighting for Chloe's social media posts? Do not play your sick games with me right now," he yelled, completely dropping the polished, affluent persona he usually wore like a cheap, rented suit. I just logged into the commercial banking portal on my phone. The accounts are entirely frozen. The credit lines are completely locked out. The bank sent me an automated email saying the account is under immediate review for unauthorized personal use. Fix this right now. You have to call them and tell them it was a mistake. "Fix it?" I asked, taking a slow, deliberate sip of my ginger ale. "Carter, you took $40,000 from a commercial real estate loan to pay for a wedding venue. That is called wire fraud. You used my pristine credit score, my hard work, and my legal liability to fund a party where you and your new wife explicitly decided I was too ugly and too plain to sit at a dinner table with the rest of our family." There was a sudden, chilling silence on the other end of the line. I could hear his rapid, panicked breathing over the phone speaker. He realized, in that terrifying moment, that I knew absolutely everything. He realized the ATM had finally closed its doors permanently. "Julian, come on, man," he stammered, his voice dropping from an angry shout to a desperate, pathetic whisper. "It was just a temporary bridge loan. I swear to you on my life. I was going to pay the account back next month when my new luxury mattress shipment finally came in. You have to call the bank. Tell them you fully authorized the transfer for a corporate networking event. If you do not do this, they are going to call the entire $200,000 loan due immediately. I do not have that kind of liquid cash. I don't have anything, Julian." "You really should have thought about your lack of liquid cash before you leased a Porsche you cannot afford and rented a luxury vineyard to impress people who do not actually care about you," I replied smoothly, feeling no guilt. "You have a new wife now. It is time to stand on your own 2 feet like a real man. There is no more safety net. You are doing this over a folding chair." He screamed, his anger flaring up again as the brutal reality of his impending bankruptcy set in. "You are destroying my entire business and my marriage over a seating chart. You are insane." "No, Carter," I said, leaning back into my airplane seat. "I am doing this because of a lifelong pattern of disrespect, exploitation, and emotional abuse. The chair was just the final straw that broke the camel's back. You thought I was stupid. You thought I was weak. You thought you could take my money, commit fraud, humiliate me in front of hundreds of wealthy guests, and I would just swallow it like I always do to keep the peace. But I am completely done swallowing your garbage." "Julian, please." Chloe is crying in the lobby. People are staring at us. The hotel manager is looking at us like we are common criminals. "Just unlock the card for the weekend so we can check in. Please, I am begging you as your brother. Family is supposed to make sacrifices for the greater good, Carter. Isn't that exactly what Mom told me when she banished me to the wall? I suggest you and Chloe start sacrificing. Maybe try a cheaper hotel." I ended the call and permanently blocked his number from my phone. I felt a profound, overwhelming sense of peace wash over me. For the first time in my entire life, I was not protecting my golden child brother from his own terrible, arrogant choices. I was finally letting the real world give him exactly what he deserved. The fallout from freezing the commercial accounts spread through my family faster than a wildfire in a dry California forest. By the time my flight landed and I unlocked my phone in the crowded airport terminal, the extended family group chat was an absolute, unmitigated war zone. My mother had left me 6 frantic voicemails, each one escalating in panic, anger, and severe guilt-tripping intensity. She demanded to know why I was maliciously ruining her golden child's perfect honeymoon. She accused me of being insanely jealous of his incredible success, his beautiful new wife, and his vibrant social life. I did not respond to a single message. I simply deleted the voicemails and drove home to my quiet, peaceful house. The next evening, I was sitting in my living room, enjoying a quiet, home-cooked dinner, when my phone rang loudly. The caller ID showed it was Uncle Bob. Uncle Bob was my father's older brother, a man who fancied himself the strict patriarch of the entire Reynolds family. He was a retired middle manager who loved to aggressively give unsolicited financial and life advice at every single family gathering, despite the fact that he had mismanaged his own retirement funds for decades. I answered the call, knowing exactly what kind of ridiculous lecture was coming my way. "Julian, what on earth are you doing to your own brother?" Uncle Bob demanded without even offering a basic greeting. "Your mother called me in absolute tears this morning. She says you maliciously cut off Carter's business funding while he is out of the country because you were unhappy with where they placed your seat at the wedding reception. That is the most petty, childish, vindictive thing I have ever heard in my entire life." "Hello to you too, Uncle Bob," I said calmly, taking a bite of my steak. "And no, I did not cut off his business funding over a seat. I withdrew my legal guarantee on a commercial loan because Carter committed blatant wire fraud and stole $40,000 of bank money to pay for his wedding venue." Uncle Bob scoffed loudly into the receiver. "Fraud? Do not be so dramatic, Julian. It is a family business. Money moves around all the time. That is how the real world works. You have a massive salary at that tech company. You max out your 401k every year. You can easily afford to help him out and cover the difference. You are the older brother. It is your fundamental duty to be the bigger person, protect the family name, and support him when he stumbles. You need to call the bank, apologize, and fix this immediately before you cause a permanent, unforgivable rift in this family. You do not want to end up dealing with a lawsuit from your own brother." "I am not fixing anything, Bob," I replied, purposefully refusing to use his familial title. "He is a 30-year-old grown man. He made his choices. And frankly, the permanent rift was already created when my own parents and my brother treated me like an unwanted stray dog at a public event. You are a bitter, small, incredibly selfish man, Julian," Uncle Bob spat, his voice trembling with self-righteous anger. "When the time comes to discuss the family inheritance, do not be surprised when your name is left completely off the documents. You are going to end up completely alone with that toxic attitude. I would much rather be alone than be an unpaid ATM for a group of people who fundamentally hate me," I said smoothly. "Keep your inheritance, Bob. I earn my own money." I hung up the phone. He was the first official casualty of my new boundary. I permanently blocked his number and went back to my dinner. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. This time it was my cousin Maya. Maya was an intelligent, sharp-witted emergency room nurse who had always seen right through Carter's arrogant nonsense, but she generally kept quiet at Thanksgiving dinners to avoid pointless family drama. "Julian," Maya said, her voice completely different from Uncle Bob's. It was gentle, validating, and almost conspiratorial. "Please tell me you actually had the guts to walk out of that ridiculous, staged circus on Saturday." "I did," I said, feeling a genuine smile form on my face for the first time in days. "Good for you, Julian," she sighed heavily. "Julian, you need to know it wasn't just you. That entire wedding was nothing but a staged, heavily filtered photo shoot for social media. Do you know where they sat me and my husband? They put us at a tiny, wobbly table right next to a broken portable heater in the overflow tent outside. We could not even hear the music. And Aunt Clara? They literally told her she could not be in the extended family photos because her floral dress clashed with the pastel, neutral theme Chloe had mandated. They literally shoved half of our blood relatives into the shadows so Chloe could prominently feature her random influencer friends who flew in from California for free drinks. I listened in stunned silence as Maya exposed the full, disgusting truth of the seating chart. It wasn't an isolated incident directed only at me. Chloe and Carter had actively, maliciously categorized the entire family. If you were over 40 years old, if you were not conventionally attractive by internet standards, or if you did not wear recognizable designer labels, you were hidden away. We were not esteemed guests celebrating a union. We were unwanted, visually offensive extras on a movie set. Maya told me that Aunt Clara was organizing a small, private dinner for all the family members who had been sidelined and humiliated. No fancy clothes, no cameras, no aesthetic requirements, just actual family eating good food. She invited me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a genuine sense of belonging and community. The most important phone call, however, the one that truly set the final stage, came the following Tuesday morning. It was an unrecognized number from a very wealthy area code. I answered cautiously. "Julian Reynolds?" A deep, incredibly authoritative voice asked. "This is Arthur Sterling, Chloe's father." Mr. Sterling was a very serious, old-money commercial real estate investor. He was a man who built his wealth from the ground up, and he was the kind of man who absolutely did not tolerate foolishness, lies, or incompetence. "Yes, Mr. Sterling. How can I help you?" I asked, keeping my tone respectful and entirely professional. I received a rather concerning, hysterical phone call from my daughter yesterday from their hotel lobby. Mr. Sterling said slowly, his voice betraying no emotion. "She claims you have maliciously frozen her husband's business accounts out of sheer, petty spite, leaving them completely stranded on their honeymoon with no access to funds. However, I am a seasoned businessman, Julian. I know perfectly well that commercial banks do not freeze massive credit lines over petty family squabbles or hurt feelings. They freeze them over severe legal violations and fraud. What exactly did my son-in-law do?" I respected the man instantly. He wasn't calling to yell, threaten, or demand blind loyalty like my mother or Uncle Bob. He was calling to gather undeniable facts. "Mr. Sterling, I was the sole financial guarantor on Carter's commercial loan because his personal credit is completely non-existent," I explained methodically, laying out the facts like a prosecutor. "Last week, I discovered through the banking portal that Carter initiated an unauthorized wire transfer of $40,000 from that specific commercial account directly to the vineyard to pay for the wedding venue. That is a direct violation of the loan terms, and I was legally obligated by my attorney to notify the bank's fraud department and withdraw my guarantee to protect my own assets from seizure." There was a long, incredibly heavy silence on the line. I could practically hear the gears turning in the older man's sharp head as he pieced the puzzle together. "He used commercial debt to pay for the wedding venue," Mr. Sterling repeated, his voice dropping to a dangerously quiet register. "The wedding that he explicitly looked me in the eye and told me his highly successful real estate firm was paying for in straight cash." "That is absolutely correct, sir. I have the digital statements to prove it if you need them." "I appreciate your honesty, Julian," Mr. Sterling said. "I believe we have a very significant, very severe problem to address when they return from this trip. Thank you for your time." The sharp click of the phone disconnecting sounded exactly like the cocking of a loaded shotgun. Carter had absolutely no idea what kind of hellfire was waiting for him at home. The following weekend, I happily attended the dinner organized by Aunt Clara. It was held in her modest, cozy, brightly colored dining room. Maya was there, along with several other cousins, and Grandma Rose sat happily at the absolute head of the table in her medical wheelchair. There was absolutely no dress code. There were no professional photographers adjusting lighting umbrellas. It was just loud, genuine laughter, warm, homemade food, and actual human connection. We swapped stories about the utter absurdity of the wedding, the terrible food they served in the overflow tent, and Aunt Clara proudly raised a glass of cheap wine to me for having the sheer courage to walk out and take my money back. It was exactly the kind of loving, supportive family environment I had always desperately wanted but never had in my own home. But the peace did not last long. The very next day, my mother called. She did not yell this time. She sounded incredibly exhausted, completely defeated, and entirely panicked. She begged me, her voice breaking, to come to Carter's leased McMansion that evening for a mandatory family mediation. She said Mr. Sterling was going to be there, and things were rapidly spiraling completely out of control. Reluctantly, knowing I needed closure, I agreed. I needed to see this through to the absolute, undeniable end. When I arrived at Carter's sprawling, overly modern, aggressively sterile rental house, the tension in the massive living room was thick enough to cut with a butcher knife. Carter looked absolutely terrible. He had dark, heavy circles under his eyes, his designer shirt was wrinkled, and his usual arrogant, untouchable swagger was completely gone. Chloe sat perfectly straight on the edge of the white leather sofa, her arms crossed defensively over her chest, glaring absolute daggers at me as I walked in. My parents sat huddled together on a love seat, looking incredibly small, old, and terrified of the storm that was brewing. And standing rigidly by the modern gas fireplace, looking exactly like an executioner waiting to drop the axe, was Arthur Sterling. He held a thick, heavy manila folder in his large hands. "Let's get straight to the point and stop wasting time," Mr. Sterling said the absolute moment I walked into the room. He tossed the thick folder onto the glass coffee table. It landed with a heavy, terrifying thud that made Carter flinch. After our phone call, Julian, I had my personal accountants look deep into Carter's business structure and financial history. He turned his cold, unforgiving gaze to Carter, who visibly shrank deeper into the expensive leather sofa. "You looked me in the eye and told my daughter you were a highly successful commercial real estate agent. You told me your luxury mattress import business was a massive, lucrative success. The certified documents in that folder prove that you do not own a single piece of real estate. You lease this massive house. You lease that ridiculous Porsche in the driveway. And your business has exactly zero revenue. It is a shell. The only reason it existed, the only reason you have a roof over your head, was because your older brother here foolishly signed his name on the dotted line to protect you." Chloe violently turned to Carter, her meticulously contoured face turning ghost pale. "You told me you paid for this entire wedding in cash. You told me you were a millionaire. He paid for it with a commercial loan he fraudulently drained." Julian correctly protected himself by withdrawing his guarantee, "and now the bank is demanding the entire $200,000 loan balance immediately," Mr. Sterling said mercilessly, his voice echoing in the large room. "You are completely, undeniably bankrupt, Carter. You have absolutely nothing. You are a fraud." Carter buried his face in his hands, letting out a pathetic sob. My mother, entirely incapable of accepting reality, immediately jumped to her golden child's defense, completely blinded by her lifelong favoritism. "Arthur, please," my mother pleaded, hysterical tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "It was just a small financial mistake. Julian can fix this. He has the money in his accounts. He has a massive salary. Julian, please, I am begging you as your mother, you have to call the bank and reinstate the loan. Do it for the family. You cannot let your own brother lose absolutely everything just because you were a little upset about a seat at a wedding." I stared at her, feeling absolutely nothing but profound, heavy pity. "Mom," I said, my voice incredibly clear and steady. I was not just upset about a folding chair. I was upset because I saw the visual assessment spreadsheet. I saw that Chloe graded me a C- and explicitly told the wedding planner to hide me by the speakers because I am too plain. My mother waved her hand dismissively, sobbing harder. "I know, Julian. I know all about the list. Chloe showed the seating chart to me weeks before the wedding. We just wanted the photos to look perfect for the bridal magazines. It wasn't a personal attack on you. You just don't fit the aesthetic they needed to build their online brand. Why can't you just put your massive ego aside and help him survive this?" The entire room went completely, terrifyingly dead silent. Even the stoic Mr. Sterling looked genuinely shocked by her words. I looked at my mother. The sheer, breathtaking cruelty of her admission hung heavily in the air, suffocating any remaining love I had for her. She knew. She had known all along that they were categorizing our family by appearance, grading us like cattle, and she had fully approved it. She had actively, knowingly participated in my public humiliation just to secure her golden child's fake, internet-famous lifestyle. I looked at her crying face, then at my father who was cowardly staring at the floor, refusing to intervene, and finally at Carter, who was still hiding behind his hands. I am not putting my ego aside, Mom, I said, my voice radiating absolute finality, and I am not fixing his miserable life ever again. You chose your perfect aesthetic over your own son. Now you can live with the ugly reality of it. I turned around and walked out of the house. Behind me, before the front door even closed, I could hear Chloe screaming at Carter at the top of her lungs, the loud, chaotic sound of their fake marriage immediately crumbling into dust under the crushing weight of total financial ruin. It has been exactly 6 months since that explosive, life-altering night in Carter's leased living room. The fallout was as swift, brutal, and comprehensive as I anticipated. Without my financial backing and my pristine credit score, the bank formally called the massive commercial loan due in full. Carter, possessing absolutely zero liquid assets, college fund remainders, or savings, defaulted immediately. The mattress business was entirely liquidated. The bank seized everything in the warehouse, every piece of inventory, and every office chair. 2 weeks later, the leasing company came in the middle of the night and repossessed the shiny, arrogant Porsche he loved so much. He was forced to break the lease on the massive rental house, destroying what little credit he had left, and is currently living in the damp, unfinished basement of my parents' suburban house. Chloe did exactly what a person entirely obsessed with image and wealth does when the money completely runs out. She filed for a very messy, very public, and highly vindictive divorce. She posted a long, tearful, heavily edited video online talking about being financially abused, manipulated, and lied to, completely ignoring her own horrific, shallow behavior regarding our family and the seating chart. She even threatened to fight a brutal legal battle for full custody of the expensive designer dog they had bought together, using the animal as leverage to try and extract whatever pathetic pennies Carter might have hidden away. She demanded alimony from a man who works part-time at a retail store now. As for my parents, they tried to call me incessantly for the first 3 months. They sent endless text messages oscillating wildly between begging for financial help to pay for Carter's expensive divorce lawyers, and calling me a monster and a traitor to the family bloodline. I never responded to a single one. I went to my carrier and officially changed my phone number. I blocked their email addresses. I established an impenetrable, mile-high concrete wall between my newfound peace and their endless toxicity. I missed out on a lot of family events, and honestly, the thought of a future family funeral gives me anxiety, but the peace is worth it. Last week, I checked my mailbox and found a thick, handwritten envelope. I recognized the scrawl immediately. It was from Carter. I opened it and read the first few lines. It was a rambling, desperate apology. He talked about how much he regretted everything, how he finally understood the true value of my silent support, and how he desperately wanted to make things right between us. But the final sentence gave his true, unchanging intentions away. He asked if we could meet for coffee because he had a really great new real estate business idea and just needed a very small, temporary seed investment from my savings. I did not feel angry. I did not feel sad. I just felt incredibly tired of the repetitive, predictable cycle of abuse. I walked into my home office, turned on my heavy-duty paper shredder, and fed the letter directly into the metal blades without a second thought, watching his empty promises turn into confetti. My life now is quiet, but it is absolutely not lonely. Because I was no longer distracted by the crushing stress of my family's demands, I poured my energy into my career. I received a massive promotion at work, taking over a division lead role with a salary increase that allowed me to finally purchase a beautiful piece of real estate, a home with a large, green backyard in a quiet neighborhood. I spend my weekends hosting loud, messy barbecues with Aunt Clara, Maya, and the rest of the family members who value genuine connection over Instagram aesthetics. Grandma Rose comes over every single Sunday, and I make absolutely sure she sits right in the exact middle of the living room where everyone can see her and talk to her. Walking out of that vineyard wedding was the most painful, terrifying thing I have ever done, but it was the necessary catalyst that saved my life. I learned the hard way that you cannot buy respect, and you certainly cannot buy unconditional love. When you finally stop setting yourself on fire just to keep toxic people warm, you realize how beautiful the world actually is when it isn't burning around you. I am no longer the background brother. I am no longer an ATM. I am the architect of my own life. And this time I am staying firmly, unapologetically in the center of the frame. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. It took a massive amount of courage to share this deeply personal journey, but I know there are thousands of people out there who are constantly sacrificing themselves for families who will never appreciate them. You have to learn to set firm boundaries. You have to know your own worth, even when the people who share your blood refuse to see it. Have you ever faced something similar with your own family? Have you ever had to cut ties with someone who only saw you as a financial resource? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey. Stay strong, protect your peace, and never let anyone put you in the corner.